All right, so today we're going to really dive deep into how stress messes with your brain.
Yeah,
And we're going to get into some pretty intense neuroscience.
right.
But I promise we'll make it clear and engaging and really useful for you guys.
Absolutely.
Have you ever felt your brain just completely shut down when you're under pressure?
Oh, yeah,
Like you just can't even think?
definitely.
So we're going to uncover why that happens.
Yeah.
And get this, we're not just talking about one brain here, but three.
3 brains.
Three interconnected parts.
Yeah, it's called the triune brain theory.
The triune brain.
Triune brain theory, and basically what it suggests is that our brains have evolved in layers,
Okay.
each with their own distinct function.
So let's unpack this triune brain thing. It
Yeah.
kind of sounds like we're carrying around a prehistoric brain
It kind of is like that.
and our modern skull, right?
Yeah, think of it like you're doing an archaeological dig.
Okay.
The oldest layer, our reptilian brain, you could say,
Yeah.
it's responsible for those basic survival instincts,
Okay.
made up of the brainstem and cerebellum.
Right.
It controls breathing, heart rate, reflexes, all that good stuff.
So it's like our operating system that
Yeah.
keeps our bodies running in the background,
Exactly.
even if we're not actively thinking about it.
Without even knowing.
Yeah.
And so this is where it gets really interesting when we talk about stress.
Okay.
Because when we perceive a threat,
Yeah.
this ancient part of our brain takes over.
Oh, wow.
And it's all about reaction,
Okay.
not rational thought.
So that explains why sometimes we just react without thinking
Yes.
when we're stressed.
It makes perfect sense.
Like our thinking brain is just totally offline.
It is, because it's prioritizing survival.
Right.
It's literally redirecting blood flow away from the more evolved parts of your brain,
Wow.
like the neocortex, down to your core
Oh, wow.
to prepare for action.
So it's not just a feeling.
Yeah.
It's an actual physiological shift.
Yes.
That's wild.
It's a real thing happening in our brains.
That's so cool.
And this leads us to our next layer of the brain, the mammalian brain, or the limbic system.
Okay, the limbic system.
Yeah, and this is where your emotions, desires, all those gut reactions live.
Okay.
It's like your emotional control center.
So when I get that sudden rush of anxiety before a big presentation,
Yeah,
that's my mammalian brain.
that's your mammalian brain saying, whoa, hold on a second.
Oh, interesting.
This is also where that famous fight or flight or freeze response comes from.
Okay.
So again, automatic. It's not a choice that you're making.
Right.
It's designed to help you cope with this perceived danger.
This is making me realize that stress is not just in our heads.
Right.
It really triggers this whole cascade of physical responses.
You're totally right. And speaking of physical responses,
Yeah.
have you ever noticed how your breathing changes when you get stressed?
Yeah.
You start taking these short, shallow breaths.
Yeah.
And what that's doing is actually reducing the amount of oxygen that's reaching your brain.
So not only is our thinking brain getting less blood flow,
Less blood.
it's being deprived of oxygen too.
Less oxygen.
Oh, man.
Talk about a double whammy.
It really is.
And to make matters worse, your body is pumping out all these stress hormones, like adrenaline and cortisol.
Right.
And these are powerful chemicals.
Yeah.
They're designed to prepare you for action.
Right.
But when we're exposed to them for too long,
Yeah.
that's when the problems can happen.
So chronic stress means we're just constantly swimming in these hormones,
You got it.
which explains why it's so draining.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And those hormones can actually trigger a physical response called the tendon guard reflex.
The what?
Tendon guard reflex.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
It makes your muscles tense up,
Oh.
getting ready to fight or flee.
Oh, so that's why my shoulders are always so tight when I'm stressed.
That's exactly it.
My body's ready for battle.
Ready to go.
But what happens if this tension just becomes chronic?
But that's when you start to have problems. Chronic muscle tension leads to pain, discomfort, and then that can further disrupt your brain function.
Ugh, so it's like a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle.
Stress leads to tension, which leads to more stress.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is starting to paint a pretty clear picture
Yeah.
of how stress affects our brains and bodies.
It's all connected.
But it is kind of overwhelming.
I can see that.
It feels like our own biology is working against us.
Sometimes it really does feel that
I mean,
way.
we're stressed.
Yeah.
But the good news is we're not powerless, right?
No, absolutely not.
There are things that we can do to interrupt this whole stress response
Yes.
and take back control.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to get into next time.
Okay, good.
We'll talk about what we can do to actually break free from this stress-induced cycle.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
I'm ready to reclaim my brain power
Let's reclaim that brain power.
and take back control.
Yeah.
This is already giving me a whole new perspective on stress.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I'm excited for next time.
I am too.
I'm really eager to hear what techniques we can use
Yeah, we've got some good ones coming up.
to actually take back control.
We'll give you the tools you need to navigate stress better.
Okay, awesome.
That's good.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so we've explored how stress just like hijacks our brains,
Yeah,
throws our bodies into this crazy tailspin.
absolutely.
So now let's get to the good stuff.
Allie.
What techniques can we actually use to like interrupt this stress response
Yes.
and regain control? I am ready to reclaim my brain power.
All right. I love it.
Give it back.
So it's all about giving your nervous system a break
Okay.
and shifting out of that fight or flight mode.
Right.
And one of the simplest, most effective ways to do that is through breathing.
Breathing, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just feels too simple.
I know, right?
Can you explain like why it's so important?
Yeah.
Especially for stress?
Well, think back to what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Those short, shallow breaths. When you're stressed, right,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually signaling to your body
Oh.
that you're in danger.
Okay.
And that just perpetuates the stress response.
Got it.
But when you take those deep, diaphragmatic breaths,
Okay.
you're sending the opposite signal.
So by just changing how we breathe,
Exactly.
we can change how our body responds.
You got it.
That's wild.
And there's a really cool neurological reason for this.
Okay, tell me.
It's called the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve. It runs from your brain all the way down to your abdomen.
Okay.
And when you breathe deeply, you're actually stimulating it.
Okay, remind me what the vagus nerve does again.
So the vagus nerve is a key player in your parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
And that system is responsible for calming you down, promoting relaxation.
Oh, so it's the opposite?
The opposite of that fight or flight response.
Okay.
So by breathing deeply,
Yeah.
you're basically hitting the brakes on that stress response.
Okay. So it's like a shortcut.
It is like a hack.
It could activate the calming system.
Exactly. Deep breathing. It helps lower your heart rate,
Okay.
ease muscle tension,
Yeah.
shifts your brain and body into a more relaxed state.
It's like a timeout from the stress.
Like a reset button.
Okay. I'm starting to get why breathing is so popular
Yeah.
for stress management.
It really works.
It's not just like some new agey thing.
No, it's backed by science.
It's like real science.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So we have breathing.
We got breathing.
What else? What other tools?
Movement. Movement is huge.
Okay.
When we're stressed, we tend to tense up.
Yeah.
And that physical tension
Yeah.
can actually make the stress worse.
Oh, so it's not just all in our heads.
It's not. It's in your body, too.
It's like in our bodies too.
Think about what happens when an animal gets stressed out in the wild. What do?
They run.
They move.
Right. They run away.
They run, they fight, they shake it off.
Yeah.
They do something to get rid of that tension.
Right.
But what do?
We sit at our desks?
We sit, we stay stuck, and we hold all that tension in.
Yeah. Okay. So getting up and moving around
Yes,
can help release some of that pent up energy.
absolutely. Movement improves blood flow, circulation,
Yeah.
which is especially important because remember, stress is like pulling the blood away from your brain.
Right. Okay.
So it's like giving your brain a fresh supply of oxygen and nutrients.
What about stretching?
Stretching is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it releases that muscle tension
Okay.
and it counteracts that tendon guard reflex that we talked about.
Oh, right, right.
So when you're stretching, you're telling your body, hey, it's okay, we can relax now.
Right.
The danger has passed.
So it breaks that cycle
It
of
does.
stress, tension, more stress.
Exactly.
It's like allowing your brain to unclench.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Okay.
We're not talking about intense workouts here.
Right.
Even just a few minutes of gentle stretching
Okay.
or walking can make a huge difference.
This is so empowering because we don't need any fancy equipment or special training to manage our stress.
That's the best part.
We can just use our own breath,
You got it.
our own body
Your breath and your body.
to interrupt the stress response.
It's all you need.
That's so cool.
And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Oh, okay.
It's like building a muscle,
a stress management muscle.
a stress management muscle. I love
I
that.
like that. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So let's have breathing, movement.
What else?
Well, you mentioned mindfulness earlier.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal tool for stress management.
Okay. Yeah. Mindfulness. What is that again?
So mindfulness is all about paying attention
Okay.
to the present moment
Okay.
without judgment.
Without judgment. Okay.
So it helps you become more aware of your thoughts,
Okay.
your feelings, your physical sensations.
So instead of it getting swept away
Yeah,
by all those thoughts and emotions,
exactly.
we can kind of just step back,
You observe them
observe them.
without getting caught up in the drama.
Exactly. And that awareness is key
Okay.
because it lets you choose how you respond to stress
Oh, interesting.
instead of just reacting automatically.
So you're not just at the mercy of your reptilian brain
You're not.
or your mammalian brain.
You're in control.
Feature. Okay, so it's about taking back control
It is. It's empowering.
from those more primitive parts of our brains.
Yes.
And letting our thinking brain kind of guide our actions.
That's the goal.
That's so important.
And the best part is mindfulness is a skill.
Okay.
You can cultivate it through practice.
So even if we're not like naturally mindful people,
Right.
we can train our brains to be more present,
You absolutely can.
more aware.
It takes time. It takes effort.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
This deep dive is making me realize we have so much more power over our stress response,
You really do.
and we realize.
More than you think.
Yeah.
You're not a helpless victim of your biology. You have the power to understand how your brain and body work
Okay.
and start to make choices that support your well-being.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have breathing, movement, mindfulness. Any other techniques that we should be thinking about?
There's one more that I think is so crucial,
Okay, tell.
and that's social connection.
Okay, social connection.
Remember, the mammalian brain,
Yeah.
that's responsible for our social and emotional needs.
So it's the part of our brain that craves connection.
Exactly.
Okay.
When we're stressed,
Yeah.
what do we want to do?
You want to hide.
We want to isolate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But actually, that can backfire
Okay.
and make us feel even worse.
So even though it feels counterintuitive,
It does.
reaching out to others
Yeah.
when we're stressed can actually help.
It can.
Hmm.
Connecting with supportive people,
Right.
friends, family, a therapist, whoever that is for you,
Yeah.
can really help to buffer those negative effects of stress.
So it's like a reminder that we're not alone,
Exactly.
that we have people who care about us.
It's like having a safety net
Yeah.
to catch you when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and social connection doesn't have to be complicated.
No, it doesn't.
It can just be like calling a friend,
Yeah, calling a friend.
having dinner with your family,
Dinner with family,
spending time with a pet.
spending time with a pet, all good things.
Okay, this is giving me a lot to think about.
It's a lot.
It feels like we've just like scratched the surface here
We've only just begun.
of stress management techniques.
There's a whole world out there.
Wow.
But the key is finding what works for you
Right.
and making it a regular part of your life.
So it's not about trying to do everything perfectly.
No.
It's about finding something that you can stick with.
Exactly.
solidly.
It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good point.
There will be ups and downs.
Yeah.
But the more you practice these things,
Mm-hmm.
the better equipped you'll be to handle whatever stress comes your way. You got this.
I'm already feeling more empowered and optimistic
I love to hear that.
about managing my stress.
Good.
So to recap,
Yes.
we've talked about breathing,
Movement.
mindfulness,
Mindfulness.
yes, and social connection
Social connection.
as our key tools
Yes.
for interrupting that stress response
Exactly.
and taking back control
Taking back control.
of our brains and bodies.
You got it.
Stress is a normal part of life.
It is.
It's how we respond to it.
That's what matters.
That makes the difference.
Exactly.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
I'm glad you think so.
I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else
Yeah.
you want our listener to consider?
Yeah, we talked about how our early experiences can really shape how we respond to stress.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to emphasize
Yeah.
just how adaptable our brains are.
So even if we didn't have like the ideal childhood,
Right.
or we've developed some not so helpful stress habits,
It happens.
it's not too late to change.
It's never too late to change.
Okay, good.
Our brains are constantly changing, evolving
Yeah.
throughout our lives.
So we really have the power
You do.
to like rewire our responses
You do.
and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. That's neuroplasticity at its finest.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes.
So that's really encouraging.
It's hopeful.
It means we're not stuck
You're not stuck.
with our past experiences,
Nope.
our current patterns.
You have the potential to create a whole new way of being.
Okay, I love that.
I do too.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
So for our listeners out there,
Yes.
just remember,
Yeah.
you have the power
You have the power.
to shape your own brain,
Yes.
your experience of stress.
Don't underestimate your capacity for growth and change.
This has been a game changer for me.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding
Good.
of how stress affects my brain.
And what you can do about it.
What I can do about it, that's the best part.
That's the key.
So before we wrap up for today,
Yeah.
one final thought
Okay.
for our listener.
Yeah.
we've talked about how our brains perceive threats, right?
Right.
And how those perceptions
Yeah.
can trigger that whole stress response.
Absolutely.
But what if we
Right.
could train our brains
Okay.
to perceive
Yeah.
fewer things as threats in the first place?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right.
That gets to the heart of our mindset
Yeah.
and how we view the world.
Yeah.
If we can shift our perspective to see challenges as opportunities
No, yeah.
for growth
Instead of threats.
instead of
For our
threat.
survival.
Right.
Imagine how that could transform
I know, right?
our whole experience
It would change everything.
of stress.
And that's the beauty of it. The brain can change.
So it's like upgrading the software of our minds.
Yes,
Right?
it is.
Teaching ourselves to respond with more curiosity,
Yes.
more resilience, instead of that fear
Instead of fear and panic.
and panic.
Exactly.
Okay, so one final question.
Right.
What if, by changing our relationship with stress,
Yeah.
we could actually unlock a whole new level of human potential?
I think that's the ultimate goal.
Right.
It's a journey worth exploring.
It really is.
Absolutely.
To our listener, keep learning, keep exploring,
Yeah.
keep challenging those old patterns.
Yes.
You have the power to create a calmer,
You do.
more resilient, more fulfilling life.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, like reframing challenges as opportunities instead of threats.
It is.
It makes me think about all the times I've just
Yeah.
totally let stress take over.
Right?
When maybe if I had just shifted my perspective a little bit,
Yeah.
it could have changed everything.
It's a powerful shift.
Yeah.
It takes practice.
Right.
But yeah, the more we can look at these challenges as opportunities to learn,
Yeah.
the less likely we are to get stuck in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah. So instead of just shutting down and feeling overwhelmed,
Right.
we can approach those situations with curiosity,
Yes.
a willingness to learn.
And that allows your neocortex
Right.
to stay engaged.
Our thinking brain.
Yes. Your thinking brain can actually problem solve and work through it.
We can actually use it
You can.
to build resilience.
Absolutely. It's like turning stress into a teacher
Ooh, I like it.
instead of a bully.
Yeah.
And remember, we're not trying to eliminate stress completely
Right.
because a certain amount of stress can actually be good for us.
Okay.
It can motivate us, keep us focused,
Mm.
help us perform at our best.
So it's not about being immune to stress. It's about
It's about the relationship.
having a healthier relationship. with it.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot where it challenges you
Yeah.
without overwhelming you.
Okay.
And that brings us back to neuroplasticity.
Right. The brain's ability to change.
The brain's ability to change and adapt throughout our lives.
So we can actually rewire our brains to respond to stress in a more helpful way.
Absolutely. We're learning more and more about just how flexible the brain is.
Okay, that's hopeful.
It is helpful. It's not a fixed entity.
Right.
It's constantly evolving based on our experiences, the choices that we make.
So we're not stuck with our current stress patterns.
You're not stuck.
That's good.
It's good news.
That's really good news.
Mindfulness practices, for example, have been shown to literally change the structure and function of the brain,
Really?
strengthening areas associated with emotional regulation
Wow.
and reducing activity in the fear center, the amygdala.
So by practicing mindfulness,
Yeah.
we're essentially giving our thinking brain a boost
You are.
and calming down those overactive fear responses.
That's exactly right.
And it goes beyond the brain, right?
It does.
Mindfulness can also help with sleep,
Yes.
blood pressure.
Improve sleep, reduce blood pressure, boost the immune system.
It sounds like a superpower.
It kind of is.
Are there other ways we can tap into this neuroplasticity thing
Oh.
and rewire our stress response?
Absolutely. Therapy is fantastic.
Okay, therapy. Yep.
Really helpful for identifying and changing those unhelpful thought patterns
Right.
and behaviors that are contributing to your stress.
So it's about learning new coping mechanisms
Yes.
and just healthier ways of relating to ourselves and the world.
You got it.
Don't underestimate the power of exercise either, right?
Oh, exercise is huge.
Yeah.
Physical activity releases endorphins.
Those feel-good hormones.
Those feel-good hormones. And that can really help to counteract those negative effects of the stress hormones.
And exercise also just helps us feel more connected
Right.
to our bodies,
Absolutely.
which I feel like is so important when stress has us feeling so disconnected
Yeah, you're totally right.
and overwhelmed.
And speaking of connection, spending time in nature
Oh, yeah, nature.
has also been shown to reduce stress and improve well-being.
Our brains and bodies just know how to respond to
Right.
nature.
It's like we're hardwired for it.
This is giving me so many ideas. I'm excited.
Glad.
I'm starting to see stress less as like an enemy and more as like an opportunity for growth, self-discovery.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Be patient with yourself.
Okay.
Experiment and celebrate those successes along the way.
This deep dive has been amazing.
I'm so glad.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for navigating stress.
Awesome.
Building a more resilient life.
That's the goal.
I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been truly enlightening.
I'm glad to hear it.
To our listeners, I hope this deep dive has given you a new understanding of how stress impacts your brain. But more importantly, a sense of hope.
Yes.
And empowerment.
Absolutely.
You have the tools to create a calmer, more resilient, more fulfilling life.
Yes.
Keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep practicing and keep believing in your own amazing capacity for growth. And transformation.
I love it.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.